Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer and uncover what I like to call the invisible shield that protects our health literally every single day. We're talking about good manufacturing practice, or GMP. We always see these letters stamped on packaging, we hear them tossed around in industry news, but today, we're going to map out exactly what they mean and how they completely dictate the business of healthcare, specifically zooming in on Vietnam's regulatory landscape. But before we wade into all that regulatory alphabet soup, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. How do you actually know your medicine, supplement, or even your cosmetic is safe? Think about it. When you take a pill, you expect it to cure a headache, not, cause a whole new problem. You trust that the label matches what's actually inside the bottle. But trust? Trust just isn't enough when we're talking about human health. There absolutely has to be a rigorous, standardized system backing the whole thing up. So, here is exactly how we're going to navigate this complex landscape together. We'll start with the basics of GMP, look at the 5 pillars of control, and then decode that GMP alphabet. After that, we'll compare WHO versus PICS standards, explore how this impacts Vietnam drug bidding groups, and finally, walk through the road to certification. Basically, we're taking it all the way from the broad philosophy straight down to the bottom line business impacts in Vietnam. Let's get into it. Starting off with Section 1, the basics of GMP, building quality into the product. Let's see how this overarching philosophy is really established. There's this famous industry saying that goes, quality must be built into the product at every stage, not merely tested at the end. And this really hits the nail on the head. The crucial takeaway here is that GMP isn't just some end-of-the-line check. It's not just a person randomly picking a pill off a conveyor belt to see if it looks okay. No way. It is a massive, comprehensive system controlling literally every single factor, from where the raw materials are sourced all the way to how the finished goods are stored. Simply put, you can't just test your way to quality, you actually have to manufacture it from the ground up. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to break down the exact elements that GMP controls. So let's look at Section 2, the 5 pillars of control. The core elements of good manufacturing practice. I like to think of a GMP system kind of like a highly disciplined Michelin star kitchen. It relies entirely on 5 foundational pillars: people, materials, machines, methods, and environment. So it's not just about having a killer recipe, which would be your methods. It's about the chef's personal hygiene and their rigorous training, so the people. It's the strict, verified sourcing of every single ingredient, your materials. It's the absolute precise calibration of the ovens, the machines. And of course, it's the strict cleanliness and even the air quality of the kitchen itself, the environment. If even one of these pillars crumbles, the safety of the final product is completely compromised. The whole shebang falls apart. Now, since not all GMP standards are created equal, it's time for Section 3. Decoding the GMP alphabet and navigating global regulatory standards. Let's wade through this sea of acronyms and get these global terms clearly defined. First up on the list is CGMP. That little C in the front, that stands for current, and this is enforced by the US FDA. It basically acts as a super strict reminder to manufacturers targeting the US market that they have to keep their systems constantly updated. You can't just rely on technology from 20 years ago and call it a day. You've got to use current, up-to-date technologies to stay compliant. Next, we've got EU GMP, which is issued by the European Medicines Agency. This one acts as the ultimate, rigorous gateway to the European pharmaceutical market. Because of the sheer, massive mountain of documentation required and the expectation for absolute flawless execution, it's pretty much universally recognized as one of the highest, strictest, and honestly, most punishing global quality standards a facility can possibly undergo. Then there's WHO-GMP. Issued by the World Health Organization, this one serves as the essential baseline foundation. It's actually widely adopted in a ton of countries, including Vietnam, as the absolute minimum requirement to manufacture pharmaceuticals. It definitely ensures basic safety, but, well, as we'll see in a minute, it's really just the starting point. And finally, for your skincare, your makeup, and beauty products, we have CGMP ASEAN, managed by the ASEAN Cosmetic Committee. This is a harmonized set of guidelines specifically tailored for the cosmetics industry. It's all about ensuring regional safety right across Southeast Asia. Which brings us right into Section 4, WHO versus PICS/S standards, focusing on the key differences in strictness. What actually happens when we stack the baseline WHO standard up against the increasingly popular PICS/S standard? When you compare these two side by side, the differences are honestly pretty wild. While WHM-GMP mentions quality risk management just twice, yeah, literally 2 times, PICS demands an entirely proactive approach to risk. They dedicate a whole entire annex to it. On top of that, WHO's validation guidelines are getting a bit outdated, whereas PICS demands highly detailed validation, incredibly strict rules on cross-contamination, and continuous stability testing. So why does this proactive stance even matter? Simple. Finding a defect before it happens saves lives, and let's be real, it saves millions of dollars. This massive leap in quality control is exactly why Vietnam is currently gearing up to join the 46 member countries of PICS. It's a real game changer that's going to significantly elevate their domestic manufacturing. And the global goalposts, they're always moving. Case in point, the recent 2023 EU Annex 1 update. This became the brand new global baseline for sterile products, and it mandated a completely holistic contamination control strategy. What that means in plain English is that manufacturers can't just clean up messes anymore. They have to proactively design cleanrooms and barrier technologies that stop contamination from ever entering the environment in the first place. And because Pixelis incorporates this EU text, manufacturers worldwide are suddenly having to adapt to these incredibly high modern standards.
Okay, so how does this affect the money? That leads us perfectly into Section 5, Vietnam drug bidding groups, and how GMP tiers impact business bottom lines. Let's zoom right in on Vietnam and see how these global acronyms directly dictate financial success under key healthcare regulations, specifically looking at Circular 15. This hierarchy dictates hospital drug procurement in Vietnam, and it's fascinating. Achieving those super rigorous EU or PICSA standards instantly bumps a company up into groups 1 and 2. Now, these are the highly lucrative, top-tier contracts where hospitals are buying in massive, guaranteed volumes. On the flip side, if a manufacturer only holds that baseline WHO GMP we talked about earlier, that lands them all the way down in groups 4 or 5. So you see, investing in a higher GMP standard isn't just some regulatory checkbox. It is a direct, calculated business strategy to unlock higher-tier markets, snag better pricing, and secure those guaranteed revenue streams.
And it's not just big pharma feeling the heat here. Back in 2019, Vietnam made GMP compliance absolutely mandatory for all domestic health supplement manufacturers. Period. Doesn't matter how big or small the operation is, if you want to make dietary supplements there, you must have that certified invisible shield protecting the consumer. No exceptions. So, the million-dollar question: how does a facility actually navigate this overwhelming regulatory maze and come out certified on the other side? Let's move into our final section, Section 6, the road to certification, turning theory into an actionable reality. It's a journey for sure, and it always starts with step 1, a gap analysis. This is where they honestly assess their current facility against the specific GMP targets they're aiming for. Then, step 2 kicks in, involving facility design and generating a truly massive amount of documentation, stuff like standard operating procedures. Step 3, that's all about the people. We're talking intensive training for personnel and running extensive trial operations. Finally, step 4 is the internal audit, where the teams have to tackle any CAPA findings. CAPA stands for Corrective and Preventive Actions, by the way. You fix those before you undergo the daunting official certification appraisal. Sticking to these structured steps, from that very first gap analysis all the way to the official audit, is absolutely crucial to ensuring the transition to a higher GMP tier is successful, sustainable, and doesn't end up costing a fortune in mistakes. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought about those invisible safety nets guarding your health every single day. Knowing the intense scrutiny, the incredibly precise facility designs, the continuous monitoring, and those strict bidding tiers behind these standards, is it going to make you look differently at the manufacturing origins of your next supplement or cosmetic product? Because as we've seen today, quality is definitely not an accident, it is engineered. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this topic, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.